He always takes me out.
Uh,
She goes from the
Flag salute. Please join me in the.
Again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
So introduction, we just go around with everybody or?
Dave Parker, Superintendent.
Eileen Cliff, business.
Melinda Fisher, budget committee.
Mark Everett, school board member, budget committee member.
Our budget committee here.
Brandon Farrell, school board member.
Hey, Brenda, state school board member. Valerie Ingram, school board member.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I guess approval of the minutes from last time.
I'll first make a motion to approve the agenda.
Oh,
second.
sorry.
You can always count on her to keep you in mind.
Sweet.
We're here for.
I second, sir.
Yep.
Right. And then
All in favor.
all in favor.
I
I.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the March 13th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor.
I
Now it's like budget update.
Thank you. So welcome for the second budget committee meeting tonight. It's the second preliminary budget committee meeting. We will have, if we're looking at the budget calendar, the next budget meeting we have on May 11th will be where the budget message is presented by Superintendent Parker. And then you will see the budget itself and any major changes and assumptions that are built into it at that time. Once you guys receive the budget, it will become a public document at that time. We'll also have an opportunity for public voice at that meeting. And then we'll have 2 additional budget committee meetings to be able to review the budget, discuss, deliberate, ask for additional information. Most years, we always need this budget committee meeting number 2, and then 3 is optional depending on how much additional information you need or discussion. So that one is up in the air. The June 12th will be when the board will have their board budget hearing and adopt the budget. And then July 7th, we will certify the budget. So just kind of gives you a reference of where we are in the budget process. Looking at our current cash flow on what we have right now and what we're looking at, this is through March of 31st. And we have a 19.3% ending fund balance. It's $14.6 million. It is slightly less than where we actually ended last year. We ended at 22.6%. So we are utilizing about $2.5 million of last year's fund balance this year. But it is still higher than what we had budgeted. So we've had significant savings this year in both revenue and expenditures. And the next slide, Enrique, you can keep it on this one. Go back. Yeah. So this is the graph, but the next slide has like the information that I'm going to be talking about. When we're looking at the current year, our local resources are up by $4.5 million. A lot of that is between either our local resources or our beginning fund balance that rolled forward from last year. Our local resources are about $1.8 million higher than what we had anticipated for the year, but 500,000 of that is due to the high school water damage. So when we got reimbursement for those expenditures, it comes in as revenue. So the expenditures are included in expenditures. So you'll see that increase there. And then we have our indirect rate and our property taxes continue to be higher than what we had budgeted. Indirect rate is higher primarily because of all of the ESSER and additional grant funds that we've gotten this year. State school fund is about $407,000 higher than what we had budgeted. And that's just updated, state school fund estimates from ODE. And then when we're looking at our expenditures continue to trend lower than what we had budgeted originally. And most all of it is going to be in salaries and labor. We've had a lot of turnover this year, so we've had more experienced teachers up from higher up on the salary schedule, leaving and then hiring younger staff. So we've had a shift in that. Plus we've had just with that turnover comes gaps in having to have subs and then not being able to fill subs through the year. So we've had just a lot of shifts and continued challenges from the COVID pandemic hitting us this year. So that is the current cash flow on what I'm seeing right now. I'll update it again next week once we run the April payroll and finalize all of our purchasing for April. And then that will be the forecast that we use in our beginning fund balance for next year's budget. Any questions on current year? Okay. One more down. People. Thank you. Looking at the big things that are left for this year, that I don't have included in this forecast is the state school fund estimates. We get updated for 3 years. So last year's final reconciliation, we'll get a final adjustment, the May state school fund. And so we'll know what that is in the upcoming week. I'll have that built in there. And then we should get an update on next year's based on whatever comes out of the legislative session. So on May 17th, have it later. Yeah, May 17th, we'll get an updated economic forecast, but that won't come in time for our budget document. So we will use the prior forecast, $9.9 billion state school fund for next year's budget.
Okay, what happens on the 17th?
Well, the economic forecast will come out on the 17th, but they won't have the state school fund finalized by then. Yeah, so it could be 2 weeks, it could be the end of June before we find out. Yeah,
But it's not likely that'll be lower than that 9.9.
it's not likely it'll be lower
It would
than,
be more
it will-
if it's different.
Right.
We would hope.
I'm gonna talk about it coming up here a little bit later. I have some more comments about it, but they're not thinking that this forecast is gonna be lower. They're thinking it's gonna show continued growth, which will be some of what I want to talk to you all about.
So just wait. And then-
Like 1 week in Texas and you got the y'all.
Moving there.
Let it slide.
That was great. That may be the only time in the last 9 years that I've said that to you. So that's great. So,
all right. So when we look at the 23-24 budget and developing that, we are close to finalizing that, close to balancing the 23-24 budget. It will maintain our current service level and utilize any fund balance. So with the $9.9 billion state school fund. So I think we'll hear that a few times from Dave and I tonight, because that will be the challenge going into the next month or so and into next year if we only get 9.9. So looking at the legislative session, I talked briefly about the May 17th forecast. It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be the end of June after that before we get the final state school fund estimate for this next biennium. We know 9.9, that is what we're the most confident in right now. And so that's what we're building this budget off of. And then if anything additional comes in, then we already have kind of that list of here's the triggers to pull on what the next steps are. We're working on finalizing what that list is. But our hope is that if it does come in above the 9.9, we would be able to then just ask for additional appropriation. at this time, with the tightness of this budget calendar and the budget schedule, we're not gonna ask to amend this budget just because we have to get it adopted by the board before the end of June. So we'll just ask for additional appropriation if it comes in higher. The Student Success Act and Measure 98, they're close to current service level. There's not gonna be any significant changes in our spending for those. Then I wanted to show you about the state school fund and what a $9.9 billion state school fund for the biennium does for us as compared to what a 10.3 does. $10.3 billion state school fund is what OASBO is calling current service level. OASBO is our state business manager group. So on average, districts across the state need $10.3 billion to maintain current service level without diving into reserves. So when we're looking at the gap between 9.9 and 10.3, looking all the way over to the right, that 6.5%, $9.9 billion gives us 6.5% more than the prior biennium. But when we break that out into a year-by-year increment, the state school fund is allocated 49% the first year, 51% the second year of biennium. So when we look at the amount we're getting for this year and the amount we would get for next year, it's only a 2.3% increase. And then a 4% increase the second year of biennium. So when we look at that 2.3% increase with a $9.9 billion state school fund as compared to our COLA costs that are 3.25% and STEP 4.5%, that's 7.75% increase for many staff members and labor costs for us in the district. And if our labor costs are going up that much and our state school funds only going up the 2%, that's where we're diving into our ending fund balance to maintain current service level. So that's the big challenge with us. 10.3 is the next two lines above that. And that would be a 6% increase for us from this year to next year. So that's more in alignment with what our costs are actually going up and more in alignment with what CPI is going up.
So I think this is the time that I just want to jump in and talk a little bit about the next 3 or 4 weeks, because of 2% is inadequate. What we're hearing from legislators is, hey, we paid, we're meeting your needs. And they're sitting on, it's $2.8 billion worth of reserves, cash that they're sitting on. And so the $400 million worth of to get us to current service level, we feel like they still have plenty of rainy day reserves even with that. And so I think it's going to be really important coming up here because they're talking about this $9.9 billion budget as an expansion. It's an austerity budget. We're going to be dipping into reserves just to maintain what we're doing this year. No extras, we're actually trimming off some of the federal funds and stuff. So I think it's going to be important for us to be pretty active with I've set up meetings with our legislators to begin to talk to them about this. Because of when you see it broken out like this, and it's pretty clear, it's a 2.3% increase. There's nothing right now that is increasing by 2.3%. So we've got to communicate what this means to us. Eileen has done an excellent job. We've done an excellent job building the ending fund balance because we knew that this time was coming. But lots of districts around us have not. And so they're even in worse positions for this. So I would just say to us that, number one, the May 17th forecast is another really important date because we're anticipating that they're going to show more reserves and more growth in their receipts, which is going to put even more pressure on them to fund schools adequately. So I just want to, and I'm happy to get you contacts for Susan and for Janine, but I just think we need to make some phone calls and make sure that folks are hearing us we're very grateful. Oregon, they have done a very good job continuing to increase the investment in education. Except for, again, this 2.3% doesn't even get us close to where we need to be to sustain. So I just want to kind of point that out because of, as we're moving forward and as we get into the budget, what we're going to be telling people is we're doing basically what we're doing this year again and trimming off the federal. So we're actually shrinking some from this. This budget does not invest, it does not expand. It gets us what we have, and we're going to burn ending fund balance doing that.
So this seems pretty basic, though, when you show legislators this. What's their response when they say, well, look, I mean, there it is at 2.3%, and just look around at what the COLAs are, and I mean, what's the response to that? I mean, what do they say?
So the fiscal office, the LFO, they calculated the CSL at 9.5 billion, which was even less. And so it's really hard right now because of they're being advised by the LFO that the CSL is 9.5 and
Is not correct.
But our numbers are, I mean, we're not playing. I mean, this is the actual truth. It's a 2.3 from the money that we got last year to the money that we're going to get next year, 2.3%. I don't know how else to represent that. Well, how would you say as far as OASBO? I mean, OASBO, they've been constantly meeting with legislators, trying to help them understand. None of us are giving 2.3%. Some of the recent, just so people know what's going on right now, some of the recent negotiations are opening at 20%. Now, some of these districts are lower. I mean, there is some room for them to grow, but these are numbers that are unheard of. I don't know when Woodburn, whose group was headed towards a strike, settled for 7%, 5%, 5%. So it's 17% over 3 years.
Do they have a reserve?
Yes, they had built some reserve, and I don't want to go too deep into that because I don't have really in-depth knowledge of that situation. I just know those numbers are startling. We negotiate at the end of next year, but again, there's some real wow, there's some stuff going on here. So
when we call and we talk to them, you know, I mean, would we just say, here's our number? I don't know what number you're looking at, but this is our, I guess what I'm saying is it's probably going to be something they've heard before. I don't, you know.
I think Eileen's breakdown here on this table is probably the clearest.
This one, okay.
Yeah, the clearest information that I've seen, which is with a 49-51 split. Our increase from last year to this year is 2.3%. We did give 3.25% for next year, and we've got I mean, there's it's, but I think again, Susan and Janine are great supporters of education. So, but I think we just need to continue to let them know that they're sitting on $2.8 billion worth of reserves. And we're coming out of the pandemic. We're still trying to get our feet again, and we're getting a 2.3% increase. That doesn't make sense.
Well, the bottom line,
Go ahead. All right, so what are they economically forecasting next year for the state? You know, are they thinking that, you know, revenues for the state are going to go down next year or the year after?
Not that I'm aware of, with the new forecast that comes out on the 17th, they normally give like the long range projection on that. I don't remember seeing that in the last one.
The last time, Josh Lehner, the economist, they've been forecasting a decrease and they've been watching the tax receipts increase. So he is expecting, I mean, we can't just keep going up. So last time I saw something from him, they were expecting this to slow,
Mhm.
but he wasn't forecasting a decrease. But each time we keep seeing an increase in receipts and it doesn't, I'm not sure.
It's gonna happen.
Right. Right.
It's eventually it's gonna happen. I mean, that's just my opinion, but it's gonna happen. But I just gone through this many times. I'm just wondering, it's always about the big dogs and how are they hurting? So the Beavertons, the Portlands, the bigger districts. So if they're hurting, then there'll probably be some movement. If their fund balance is like ours and they're not hurting quite as bad, then I'm just wondering where they are right now. Do we know?
Don't,
Okay.
I would assume they're hurting.
I mean,
And I think Beaverton is, I think Sherwood is really hurting.
Portland,
I think Portland is too. I'm not-
yeah.
I think that what I've heard
They need
so
to
far is that
talk-
yes.
Yeah.
That 10.3 is an important number for
So that'll
some
be,
of our
that'll make a
larger
big
districts.
difference.
Right.
So.
So looking at the general fund revenue assumptions that are going to be built into this budget that you'll see here in a couple of weeks is this $9.9 billion state school fund. And the big part of it is that we're going to maintain current enrollments. We're budgeting our revenue on floor, the grade, using last year as our benchmark, or this current year as our benchmark. And one of the reasons on that, I'll go on in the next slide, but I'll finish these couple of topics real quick, is the other thing that we'll have in this budget is increased indirect resources and increased interest revenue. So those two items, the indirect is from all of our federal grants and our ESSER funds. So that again is when ESSER expires in June or September of 25, so 24. So it's going to expire next summer. And once that goes away, that's going to feel like a loss for all of the things that are being funded from ESSER at that time. And we're stepping it down. So we're spending more this year, less in this budget year that we're working on right now, and then it'll go away. But not only is it going to go away in that, it will impact our general fund revenue because right now we claim indirect on that. So we'll see, not in this budget cycle, but the cycle after, a reduction in general revenue from that.
So can you explain indirect?
Indirect rate is what we can charge our grants for operating and management of it. So we have a flat rate with the state that we can claim any federal or state grants. So our SIA, ESSER, title, all of those grants, we get a charge, I think it's 4% or around 4% is what we get to charge those grants and keep as general fund revenue to be able to support the operations and the management of maintaining those grants.
So to Brad's earlier point, are there a lot of other districts in the state that are relying on ESSER funding as well? And they'll probably all be in the same boat
So
next year.
There's a lot of districts in the state that have already utilized their ESSER
Oh, really?
funds. We are spending part of ours on facilities and capital and then part on staffing. So it's not as significant of a loss for us. But our health aides out in the buildings, that's being funded with ESSER right now. We have some intervention funds out there. Our summer school matches have all been with ESSER funds. Our online school has all been with ESSER funds. And so those are all gonna like taper off in the next year.
we've been very purposeful about hiring, when hiring with the ESSER, hiring as a temp. Because of those are going to go away. I think the districts that are really going to struggle are the ones that actually hired more real staffing. And now they're trying to figure out how to replace that with general fund, and there's a 2.3% increase. I think we've been pretty strategic about the use of those ESSER funds. It's still, like I
It's still
said,
gonna be a loss.
there's still,
Still gonna be a
the
loss.
health aides have been very useful in the buildings. Principals and buildings have really liked them, and that funding does sunset. So there's some issues with that, but for the most part, we've been pretty strategic about that.
I have a question, when we have our regular board meeting, the Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching Grant, we're gonna add pre-kinder. And can you use that grant to also, it's real specific what you can use that grant for.
That grant is to match the bond funds, and so it has to be used for facilities improvements that were outlined in the bond, what we passed with our voters.
But wasn't there pre-kinder in there?
The pre-K, it's providing space to be able to have pre-K if we have funding to support the operation of pre-K.
Oh,
So it's to make sure we have enough building capacity to hold pre-K when funding comes available. But it does not support the staffing for pre-K.
so in it, I thought I read, but maybe I read it incorrectly, but it said, pre-kinder for all schools,
Provide pre-K spaces for all schools,
pre-K space. Oh, okay.
right? The awesome grant in the bond is specific to facilities. It's not, it doesn't do anything with operations.
Nothing for staffing.
Mm-mm.
So are we planning on pre-K for next year?
We've got pre-K now at Echo Shaw, Cornelius, Fern Hill, and Joe Gale, and those classes will roll. That funding will continue.
Yeah.
If we, depending upon what happens with pre-K, we'll expand as we can. But that will kind of depend where the preschool promise goes. Where the state goes is funding pre-K for all.
Mhm.
There's multiple groups out there working right now around solutions of pre-K for all.
So we're not planning on pre-K at Harvey Clark or at Dillard next year,
Not at this point.
not at this point, okay. All right,
Through the bond, we'll be able to make sure that there's space available to have pre-K.
so anticipating, but there, in both those buildings, Harvey Clark and Dillard, there's no classrooms, are there?
We'll have to get creative.
We use the portables, but you can't put pre-K in portables.
We actually have other thoughts rolling
Oh,
about how
okay.
we might be able to build spaces for different buildings. So we're working through all of that.
I know we don't like
Remember that,
portables.
Kate?
I know, I don't like them either, and I know you can't put pre-K in there, but anyway, I've sort of gone off on a tangent, but I'm-
But I guess to your point, though, I know that there's a plan to rebuild Cornelius in the works. Is that, are we able to take some of those funds to sort of help that project?
Actually, all the funds through the Long Range Facility Planning Committee and then the bond committee, all of the funds have been kind of, there's a plan for all of that. So while in the end, there may be some movement, for the most part, everything's already budgeted and we're now just creating the plans of how to build them and create them. So like the pre-K classrooms, there's funds already laid out for how we would do that.
And we don't have the pre-K projects as part of the bond. Those aren't scheduled for another 2 years. So we can get Cornelius and a lot of the other projects underway. And is there savings from other projects? Then that's when we can redistribute those funds. But we don't want to do that until we get those projects complete.
Yeah, because then because you physically don't have the space issue, right? So once those exist, then you kind of start.
any thoughts about what's gonna happen with those portables at Cornelius?
There's ideas out there, but there's nothing really
You're not gonna
solid that we're
reveal.
talking about.
You're gonna keep us guessing, huh? Okay. Vernon? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
My boys use the portables and they don't like them.
Pardon?
They don't like them.
Yeah, my boys go to Cornelius and they use the portables and they don't like them.
Oh, nobody likes them.
We don't like them.
We don't like them either. No, I'm not
Don't tell
advocating, I'm not advocating for them. I just asking the question, because I really think that pre-K is, and I think everyone's agreement, is really essential, in all our schools. Okay.
We'll try to keep her more focused.
Whenever she pulls out a piece of paper,
I got all my notes here.
whenever that comes out.
This next slide just kind of shows why I'm budgeting for funding, or it's in front of you guys too on your printouts. It's kind of small up here, but this really shows the 4 years pre-pandemic enrollment, and we were kind of in a declining flat enrollment. And then since the pandemic, we're in flat enrollment. So that's why I'm looking at budgeting floor funding based on this current year's enrollment, and I'm not projecting any growth going into next year, even though we do have a few developments popping up and we might have some bubbles coming in here and there. We're budgeting staffing based on a little bit of an increase in enrollment, but as far as revenue, flat enrollment. So, but this is why, because we're kind of in this declining, stagnant enrollment in our community.
Is that throughout the state? Are they seeing similar things throughout the state?
Throughout the state, they're seeing a decline in enrollment. So many districts, even in Washington County, are decreasing. We've been flat, which has been good. That's a much better place to be in.
Is the decline in enrollment because they're going to private school?
So it's interesting because I don't think you can actually show that. So we're not actually sure where the kids are going. Some of it can be private, some of it could be online charters, but there seems to be, I mean, last time I heard COSA talking about this, it was like, there's a set of kids that are just not, they're missing. Like you can't just account for it all in the increase in private.
I know I've heard of people in it since COVID, when the school shut down, they just never came back.
Mhm.
And they're not in an online school, they're not going to a private school, they're just not, which is very scary.
And they're not keeping track of that? Like,
I mean, how do you really know?
So you technically, kids, when they leave a school and they don't go to another space, you need to register with the ESD. But that's process is super fluid, loose. And so that doesn't always happen. I don't know, Kathy, what would you say? I mean, you're the one that actually handles most of the transfers, like.
Well, I know. Yeah, they just kind of fall off. They can register for homeschool, we get an update from the ESD. I get quite a few that are going to online school, but I also get, like, from the online school today, I got one that a student withdrew from their online school that's in our district, and it says, don't know where they're gonna go. I mean, we can try and follow up with those as best we can, but the high school's been really trying to just focus on the kids that are having trouble getting to school, high school, so they're, visiting and doing that kind of stuff, but it's hard to keep, because I don't have any list or anything of kids that go to private school, so if they withdraw, I mean, we can go back and check with the registrars, but there's no list of kids that are in private school.
And-
So that's, one, they're kind of lost.
Yeah, it's that, once they're out and then they drop, our ability to see them is
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
And that's where it seems like a lot of this kind of happens. Kathy will get a note from folks and like, where did this student go? And it's like, they'd already made 2 moves outside of our district. And we're trying to track it down afterwards. It gets really hard, I guess.
Go on ODE's website, and sometimes I can see them, but not always. If somebody doesn't, if they don't register.
I was gonna say, if they don't register for a new school, then you're not gonna.
Then I can't find them, yeah.
But if they go to a new school, there's a record.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they're
public
not.
schools are actually pretty tight on the fact
Right.
that when you move from one to the other,
Right.
the records there's a records request. It's when you start getting into the private and the online charters that things get really loose and fluid. Sorry, we keep going off.
It's okay. It's good conversation.
Part of the whole picture.
All right. Other major assumptions that are going to be built into this budget, you'll see at the next budget meeting, is just making sure that we are incorporating all of our labor costs, everything that's negotiated with our unions, whole step column movement, bargained amounts. Then we are looking at trying to maintain all of our current service programs, maintaining our current target class size. So as we're looking at budgeted class sizes across all of our elementaries and our middle and high school, our target is 23.5 to 1 at K4, and that's on average. 5-6 is 28.5, 7-8 is 28.5, and 9-12 is 31 to 1. And the secondaries are adjusted for time, teachers prep time out, because those kids aren't with those teachers, which is bumping up the average class size instead of looking at strict teacher to student ratio. The two big things in bold are the changes that you'll see in this upcoming budget cycle that you have not seen in the past. And the first one is funding calc separately. In the past, we funded calc as part of the high school. So calc's enrollment and everything goes into one pot, basically, and the high school then gets a certain FTE allocation, and then they decide how much FTE goes to calc based on their enrollments and with their discretionary funding.
And what's that standpoint?
The alternative schools.
Yeah.
Oh.
Community
Community learning.
Community Alternative Learning Center. I'm like, so used to calling it just calc.
She's like, you put me on the spot. I don't know.
So why did you do that? Why did you separate?
So with having calc have its own administrator coming into this new year, and having their own program and kind of just redesigning it, increasing the number of students there that it's serving, it's now big enough that we can separate it and call it its own site, its own program, its own budget. So now what we did is in the budget work that we did is we took and funded the high school based on their projected enrollment and then calc based on their projected enrollment. So it decreased the high school's FTE, but it increased calc's FTE. And so now they're separate programs. They're going to be listed separately in the budget document and staffed separately.
Great.
Calc would always have to go to the high school and then beg for funds.
That's fine.
And where they're at now with their own leadership and their own kind of school design, they need to be able to make decisions about calc that's best for calc. And so that's why separating that and then giving them.
They'll have their own discretionary funds based on their student enrollment.
Right.
So they won't have to go to the high school and ask. They'll have their own budget to manage.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the allocation for library books, they'll get their portion, right?
They should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody make sure that. I
We'll
will
put
make
you in charge of that. You can go check out their library.
On her sheet.
Here, we're talking about allocation, so.
Exactly.
So, and with that, you'll see the calc admin being funded out of general fund. This year, we funded it out of SIA carryover, so grant fund carryover, and it will be built into the general fund as an ad.
Good.
How many kids are there? Just curious.
There's, I'm trying to remember, it's like 170.
Oh,
And
wow.
they've got like 70 online kids, and then there's about 100 that are, and there's 8 classrooms there now, and they're full. I mean, they've really, when the program's starting, they just made their first visit to kind of their Friday CTE exploration, where they went and visited and kids were interacting with professionals and learning about their jobs. And so it was really cool.
And then the other thing that's going to be different in this budget versus prior budgets is our substitutes. We are now substituting with we're using EduStaff as our substitute service management contractor. And historically in the past, and even up until this year, we contract with the ESD to manage the subs, and then the subs are our employees. And the ESD is no longer doing that. And so starting next year, it will be full contract, and they'll move out of the labor and benefits column, or when you're looking at all of the sheets in the budget document, you'll see a reduction across the board on every sheet of sub-services, and you'll see an increase in contract services. So it's going to be moved on where it's located on the budget document. So you'll see that.
Will this cost us more by contracting it out?
No, it's not going to cost us more by contracting it out, but our hope is that we'll be able to fill subs faster and we'll be able to fill more open subs. So ultimately that will cost us more. But trying to budget that is challenging in trying to budget the sub-services for this next year, between us transitioning to a third-party provider and us having the last 3 years kind of in a COVID pandemic kind of, yes. I'm using this year's actual data as my baseline for forecasting sub-services for next year. but that in going through the whole budget document, that's my one like. Unknown,
Just don't really know.
yeah,
Yeah,
Very.
so
Can you go pre-COVID and get a baseline?
I can get a baseline for dollars, but costs have changed significantly
Oh, boy.
since then.
You can forecast the
Yeah.
increase.
So. I
You know what I
think,
mean.
I think we got it pretty good in there and we'll be able to adjust as we go through the year. And if we're filling more subs than what we have been able to in the past, then that's great. We'll have to adjust for it, but I think that's better. That will be, yeah,
It's just something you'll be keeping an eye on this year as we go, so you'll have a better idea for following your budget and.
yeah. And that will be one, like every month I'll be looking at
Yeah.
that just to see how it's trending compared to what I thought and how we have in the past. So yeah, that's my
Yes,
one,
you
like,
will.
eh.
Yes, you will.
But I'm pretty confident with like the budget overall. I think there's enough flex that we have capacity to adjust. So. Other things, we're gonna be maintaining all of the other major SIA or major grants that we have. The ESSER, again, reminder, it is expiring at the end of next year, so it will be a kind of loss. And a reduction in the budget going forward. So those things that aren't necessarily impacting us for this budget cycle, but we need to have an eye on for the following years. I'm trying to like make sure are on our radar so that it's not a surprise for us. All right.
so in this part of the presentation, we usually put in the strategic plan and kind of where we're headed. But this has been a year of, we're right in the middle of it. So I thought I'd just give you an update, an indication of kind of where things are headed. This first diagram here is really around our maxims, our values, and then the attributes. 5 years ago, we started into this work with 30+ community meetings and learning about people, what they wanted from the district. And we kind of came up with our maxims right there in the center. We care deeply, we stand strong, we adapt and grow. Right after we got those kind of solidified as kind of values, the pandemic happened. And then we got to exercise those values as we made decisions about how we did things based on kind of, do we care? Should say, we do care. And then last year, we had to kind of pick up the work coming out of the pandemic on, we had a lot of information about what parents wanted graduates to be able to do when they walked across the stage. But we went back out last spring to test and make sure that, like, during the pandemic, did opinions change? And so we did a bunch of surveying and digital thought exchange, and we kind of narrowed it down to these 6 kind of attributes: critical thinking, communication, empathy, collaboration, resilience, and responsibility. Across the nation, these are called 21st century skills. And there's lots of, like, our 6 fell right into the top 10 across the nation that districts kind of have. So the work came up and not only connected to the work we did 5 years ago, but it also made sense across the nation. So that's kind of the overall kind of values. This is what we're aiming towards. And then this year, we had a lot of, first we started with the bond. We went out, we were doing a lot of engagement around kind of, here's what the bond was. And then they had the thing called integrated guidance, where we had to go out and do a lot more engagement around the student investment account, around the High School Success Act, around, there was like 6 total grants that we did. When we were doing all that engagement, we also thought we should just go out and do the strategic plan at the same time. We're pulling all this information and we might as well get there. We sat the strategic design teams, about 50+ folks, parents, students, teachers, administrators, who had been started meeting in January, looked at all the data that came together, where we're doing well. There were some surveys that we put out. And through all of that, they went through a process and they kind of came up with 4 areas that we're kind of getting focused on. The first one's around instruction and learning. Again, we have to perform better. So, we've got to get focused around the instruction and learning going in our classrooms. That was very obvious coming out of the group. The second one was behavioral health and wellness. Again, students and staff, community members are still suffering. And so we already have a lot of this work rolling, but again, it's going to be a focus coming up for the next 3 to 5 years, what we're focusing on as far as that goes. Family and student engagement. So this was actually the lowest rated area that we had from all of the feedback from parents, was just around, well, it's interesting because it was both one of the higher rated areas and one of the lowest rated areas. And as we began to parse through that, I think what we're hearing is, we do a lot of communication, and for some folks, it connects. But there's an even larger section of folks who we're not connecting with. And so what's came out of this is we have to go back in and take a look at how we're engaging our families and how we're engaging students. And so you'll see a large section in the strategic plan coming up here that'll have a whole bunch of this, of how we're going to go back out and try and be more culturally responsible with how we're communicating with folks. The last area is really in the strategic plan, it's about how we as an organization behave. And so this create a resilient organization is part of the strategic plan, where how do we perform better? Are we managing our resources well? Do we have good budgeting processes? Do we have good HR processes? But something that came up that's going to get folded into this last one is around safety. Like the family and student engagement, both physical safety and then kind of our procedures for safety was a overwhelmingly interesting and important topic for our, both in the surveying we did and then also with the folks around the table. So you'll see our safety will pop up in this last area here. We're right in the middle of kind of writing the kind of objectives and the strategies. And then we'll be taking it back to the design team May 9th for a review, and then kind of moving forward. I'll be able to get you more of the details coming out of it, but I wanted to put it in front of the budget committee, because as we look at the budget, these are definitely going to be 4 of the areas that we're spending time investing in for the next 3 to 5 years. Questions around that?
And I think next year will be a lot easier to align the budget to the strategic plan, because we'll have the strategic plan, the priorities, the action items underneath. And we'll be able to say, these are the things we're doing to be able to support this area of the strategic plan. Right now, it's challenging because we are looking at, okay, we know what things that we've already started working on. We've got a really great start on the behavioral health and wellness and certain areas. So we can point to that. But next year, once we have those action steps identified under each one of those, it'll be a lot easier for us to link the budget to that. And that's one of our goals with that resilient organization, is making sure that we're budgeting and linking our strategic plan to our budget and what we're actually doing. So this is the start of it, but I hope in next year and the year after, we'll be able to really combine these two processes. Sorry.
The other thing I was going to say is, the other thing that I think Eileen is always is being able to have some accountability to what you're spending money on, that it's actually like how much is actually going towards those items. We'll be able to pull that out in the future.
This is our guiding principles from last year. Just a quick review of what our target or priorities were in last year's budget cycle. Again, it will be updated as we get our current strategic plan finalized. But maintaining lower class sizes, focusing on all students graduating, providing supports to our underserved populations, focusing on mental and behavioral health, and then accelerating the learning loss from the COVID pandemic. So those were our guiding principles in the last budget cycle, and we are rolling those forward into this budget cycle. A reminder, tonight we'll have an opportunity for you guys to talk here in just a second about what your priorities are and what you hope to see in this budget that's going to be presented at the next meeting. But reminder of what was said and discussed at this meeting last year for our budget committee. It was discussed that serving our underserved populations should be ahead of mental health and behavior. We need to consider and look at deferred maintenance, facility needs, and IT infrastructure. Elementary class size lower levels is critical. And then improving instruction, both in specialized programs and general instruction. That was the conversations from last budget meeting that we had at this time last year. So right now I would just open it up kind of to the floor, to the budget committee to kind of talk to us about what your priorities are in what you've heard tonight. Is there something else that we need to be considering or something that we need to consider more, emphasize more on?
And yeah, I just think that the improving instruction be number one.
Yeah,
I already wrote it.
yeah, instruction and reading and math, number one.
So these aren't in any order then, they're just
Okay.
random, yeah,
That shouldn't be the bottom one.
yeah.
Yeah,
Elementary class size, still, I mean, crucial that we maintain that those numbers being low. Obviously, mental health and behavioral as important as it was last year, yeah, or probably more.
I have a question. You guys have had struggles with finding substitutes, so what happens with these classes if we can't get substitutes?
So we start to cover it inside of our buildings. And so folks we'll have folks inside the building. In secondary schools, teachers have a prep period so they can jump in and they start doing it that way. We also have certified some of our classified folks who can step in and sub. But then what happens is we don't cover the classified sub kind of.
Yeah.
So it's been, and some positions we don't cover. If you're not in front of students, sometimes we can work around some of those kinds of positions. We've had other positions where folks have left and we just didn't fill their position. So we save that. But it's every morning is a particular puzzle for our head secretaries and our principals, as our principals are out teaching classes, especially in the real rough periods. Early this year and then last year, principals are out teaching PE classes and, anybody who's certified. I mean, to be honest, our district office at times is out covering classes. It hasn't been that way for the last 6-7 months, but that's how we managed. Yeah.
It's definitely been challenging the last 2 years, last year more so than this year.
Yeah.
I don't remember you saying it, but at the secondary level where teachers are teaching 3 of 4 blocks in a day, then they can backfill those 3 blocks that a teacher would be teaching with 3 other teachers during their prep time. And so then teachers are losing their prep time during that time to be able to backfill and support those student-facing classes, which is just that additional layer of challenge and stress.
And you can do that once, twice, 3 times, but last year it was like all the time. And that's when it really starts to just get old. So using EduStaff, I think there's some hope. They're a professional organization that this is all they do. And so what we've heard from other districts is, again, their ability to to have enough people to actually go get and provide a better fill rate. We're hoping that is part of what's going to come from this.
But I mean, the big picture, if you're trying to improve instruction, not having staff in the classroom doesn't improve instruction.
No.
And we all know that. So
Yeah.
that's the bottom line. And if you don't have your classified people to run their building, that creates a whole different challenge for instruction.
Yeah.
did we hire permanent substitute teachers for our buildings?
We hired temporary full-time substitute teachers this year. That was temporary with fund balance that we used. Those are not going to be rolled forward into next year's budget.
And that really helped out this year, right?
It did, it's like if you knew you were gonna be absent, had an appointment, or you're sick, then you contact your building sub first and ask them to cover you, and then if not, you would have to put it in or whatever, but.
Just knowing that every day there was one, or if you're at the high school, two people who could pick up a job no matter what. That was one or two people less that the secretary and the administrator are trying to solve a puzzle for, so.
Well, the other side of that too is they had relationships with the kids in the building.
Right,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
resident.
You know, it
And the
wasn't somebody
staff.
coming. "Oh, do that."
Well, Fitzgerald, she was
Yeah,
the sub at the high school when I was there.
Yeah.
That was great. You know, she knew the staff, she knew the principal, and it
Yeah.
worked out really well.
And we're not doing that because we're doing the edu staff. We believe it. Very good.
Well, we utilized one-time funds this year to be able to maintain that through the building in all buildings, regardless if they were needed. So, yeah, that was the challenge of this current year's budget is we had our temporary staff that we used with fund balance was the subs for classified and licensed, and we had 3 ELD teachers, high school Tomahawk and NAMS, and those were all temporary.
But we are hoping that the new sub system will.
Have a better fill rate than what we've had. Mhm.
So one of the things I've always wanted us to do is to have a longer school year. And we have one of the shortest school years of any other school district now. And it's a lot of money, but I just would throw it out there. I would like to see us add. I'd like to see us add instructional time. And, you know, adding days or. Adding days.
Yeah.
in School years.
I support that 100%.
Me too.
I'd like to see it. I mean, yeah, we're one of the shortest.
No, no argument.
I mean,
Again, I think as we look and see where this budget comes in, there's an opportunity there. We don't have that in this budget.
Yeah.
But certainly that's why we're asking, because of, I think it's important for us to start to identify what we would do if there is some room to invest.
Well, I know this is, you know, sort of off topic a little bit, but, you know, I look at what goes on in New Zealand, Australia, and Europe, and year-round school. You know, to me, really makes sense. And, you know, I don't know if anyone is doing that in Oregon, I mean. But, you know, a lot of these kids don't have activities during the summer and that, and the loss of instruction over the whole summer. And I know it's a whole shift, it's a whole big, huge bubble, but boy, Dave, talking to the other superintendents and that, we're no longer really an agricultural community, and it's pretty archaic what we're doing. And I think it would benefit instruction. I think it would really enhance instruction, and so it's not something we would do this year or next year. But boy, it might be nice in 5 years to see school districts move in that direction, because I think it would be really beneficial for the kids and also for the parents. Childcare during the summer is a nightmare for a lot of our low income, well, all of our parents. It's not low income, it's all of them. Is there any discussion out there looking at that, or is that just so foreign? United States sometimes it's so. Yeah, Hawaii does, yeah.
So, no, I haven't heard any discussion. I think this idea of, again, more instructional time, totally hear that. I'm theoretically, I don't really have any problem. I mean, everything you said, I agree with. Having kids in school without that summer, but there's no conversation. I'll be much closer to getting another school day than starting up the year-round school.
Yeah, but you put it on a survey and see how parents would respond.
Yeah.
I think parents would like it.
We can't offer something we can't do though.
Right.
If you like it, but just kidding. We don't have to.
You're on.
Yeah. We don't have enough money to do.
But I don't disagree with you. I mean, yeah, your points are well made.
I had a quick question, or thought. So I attended the high school, sort of open house that asked for the 8th graders, and was able to go to some of the mechatronics, presentations, and they had a bunch of industry folks in the library there that were, you know, talking about, you know, the ability ability to get jobs and stuff in, you know, the local area, how they were really hurting for employees and a lot of the classes and training that sort of was available as you work and as you go. And my guess is they're helping the district at some point, but is that somewhere we can sort of try to get more sponsorship or something from some of these local businesses that are trying to find more employees, and can we expand some of those programs? That it seems like those industries might have, you know, motivation to help that grow.
So both, there's multiple CTE programs that have connections into the local business. And so there's like, this is an area that's been growing for us, and we're actually pretty far out in front of it.
Yeah, that's what
Now,
it seems like.
mechatronics alone, John and his crew of folks that are teaching that, they are, they're very well connected. They were down when the Senator Bonamici was in talking about this. I haven't seen a whole lot of money flowing from Intel and those other organizations towards us. Certainly, they're very kids are, I mean, our kids are getting $60,000 a year jobs as 19-year-olds out of the mechatronics program and getting college and all sorts of stuff going. So they've got a lot of great things going there. I will say that John and the mechatronics crew they're very aggressive and in a good way. So if there's something to be made from that, I'm anticipating that they'll do it. They've been really great about connecting with industry and trying to push this forward. So, but I haven't seen a lot of money kind of flowing that way. Intel does a little bit through their volunteer hours, but it's still just a small amount compared to
The other side of that is the biking house, Rick has always got money flowing his way in terms of support and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, you know, as soon as they get out of there, they have jobs.
right.
That's what I was thinking, like, you're probably meaning, like, can they donate welding equipment or
I think they
different materials or things for certain things?
Yeah. And they do a lot, like I said, there's a lot of connections, the cabinet shop, the welding shop. There's a lot of work going on right now where they're pretty connected. But I'm not seeing a whole lot of dollars come into our general fund around that.
Well, do we need to reach out and ask them directly?
It's not really it's not really the right flow. Who we need to reach out and talk to are our legislators so that we get funded correctly.
Right. Any other ideas or thoughts for us to consider as we're finalizing this budget?
Are you gonna share the prioritized list of additions with this group? Or is that something that we'll just wait to see what,
We can.
does it, I guess it doesn't make sense.
I mean, the things that are on the top of our list that we've been considering and talking about, and nothing's finalized, and Dave might kick me under the table.
I'd love to bring it back to the group and get some opinions about it, but we've got, and I'll let, we've got kind of a large list and we haven't prioritized yet. And that's what really just now let you finish.
There is a significant list, like when we went and talked to administrators and programs and stuff, we have, everybody's priority one list is $3 million. I mean, it's pretty significant. And that's not including the subs and the health aides. The health aides is another one that we're cutting back from 6.5 hours to 4 hours is kind of that reduction in ESSER. But it's kind of something that we've heard is a big priority out in the buildings.
I guess I'm not asking for the whole shebang. When it gets to a prioritized list
When it gets to a list,
that's in sequence of, if we have this dollar, this is what we plan. That would make more sense to me to
Yeah.
share with the group or the school board, to make sure that we have an idea what that looks like.
Yeah, we would want your opinion on that. That actually.
That's all.
Because to get some guidance on where we want to push and where your priorities are. So absolutely.
Okay.
And we probably won't have that ready until we know the funding, and when that comes out sometime in June. So it most likely wouldn't be this budget committee, but it will be in June if the funding comes out.
Cool.
So.
Thanks.
Get me under the table.
I thought-
I think you just kind of interrupted you.
Really well.
That is all I had tonight. So if you guys have any questions or you guys want us to provide you more information at the next budget meeting, please definitely reach out to me. I'd be happy to make sure that I'm providing everything for you guys that you want. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Adjourn us.
We adjourned? All right. You didn't have a vote.
Thanks.
The funnest part.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order, the April 24th, 2023 Forestville School District Board of Directors meeting is called to order at 6:43 p.m. A roll call of board members present, Mark Everett, board chair present, Bradley Carroll, vice chair.
Ingrid Dusty, board member.
Valerie Ingram, superstar. Yeah, Miley on Vernon, student rep.
Okay, thank you. Would you please stand and join the flag? Okay, introductions of audience and staff. Audience, it will be quick.
Elena Santana, literacy coordinator.
John O'Neill is superintendent.
Eileen Clute, business.
Cynthia Shu, business.
Enrique Pinion, technology.
Thank you. Approval of tonight's agenda. There's a motion to approve the agenda for this meeting. So moved.
Do we want to adjust?
Oh, okay. We're gonna adjust the action items. We're gonna move. Brad needs to leave to go to the city council meeting to accept an award. He's gonna leave here soon. So we're going to move the school resource officer item, which is number 4 on the action items, now to number 1. So with that change to the agenda tonight, that's the change, right? And then I think it's been moved and moved second. Okay, I'm a yes. Yeah, I'm a yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that passes. Let's see, Miley, do you want to do the students? Okay.
Okay, I have a lot, so I'm just gonna go down the list. Okay, so our LAA, which is our Latinos in Action, they have a conference that they're gonna be presenting at. It's at Pacific. I'm not sure the exact date. I want to say it might be this Friday. Our Renaissance class, they're just restructuring and getting back to the basics and like reforming their whole class basically to make sure that it's all ready for next year. And then just between the 3 classes, we're trying to make sure that the communication is improving, especially for next year. ASB is going to be helping with the Habitat for Humanity Gala, which is coming up. ASB is also doing, our elections are complete. We do have a new president for next year, though. Do you guys know? No. Okay. His name is Nate Pratt. That's who our president is next year, so he'll be with you guys. We are working on getting the calendar done by May 5th. And then Renaissance is also getting ready for our, I'm gonna say it wrong, it's Happy Base, it's the club is Happy Month, which is Hawaiian Asian, Hawaiian Asian, it's something like that. I can't remember the exact thing, but the thing is Happy, and they're gonna be doing a cultural lunch activity for the students in this upcoming months. And then our ASB class and our class as a whole for our senior class, we are gonna be making a mural that will be going in the school, kind of showing our journey throughout high school and our COVID year and all that stuff. So you're gonna be putting it, if you walk into the high school, you keep walking almost till where you get to the cafeteria, and we're gonna be putting it on one of those walls, because there's one already there, so we're gonna put it on the other side, I think. And then prom happened a couple weeks ago. It went really well. We did do a new location in Hillsborough, which I think worked out for everyone better because it's way closer. And then our AP tests are coming up, so that's what's happening. And then Priscilla and America, Priscilla is my VP, and then America is our interim officer. They came up with a scholarship that they're going to be giving first generation students this year. It's a math book and then a bunch of school supplies for them that they'll be able to take to college. So that just went out as a like signing up and filling it out. And then I think Kathy might have sent it to you already, but we do have that Sparrow fundraiser going on for Tristan May 4th at Maud. So you just have to show the fundraiser wherever, or you can just mention it and they'll give that 20% to our Sparrow Tristan. And then kind of just getting ready for graduation because that's coming up pretty quickly. And then for the first year, we had a VAPA assembly where we got to recognize each of our VAPA groups, which was really good and was really good to see because we haven't had one and they needed to be recognized for something. So that went really well. A lot of kids were very happy about that and positive about that. And then with that, our Footloose musical just finished last week. Yeah, last week was their last time that they performed. It was really good. I went. And then I think that is it. We also did have a winter sports rally, which did just happen. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. So our seniors starting to get a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you have many AP exams coming up early May, right?
Yeah, next week.
Yeah.
First weeks.
Thank you. So, if we could just, so Brad's gonna have to leave in about 8 minutes.
I'm gonna keep it really short.
You're gonna, are you?
Just want to point out on your calendar notes, the spotlight and success and the grad dates.
Okay.
Just kind of keeping some of the graduation stuff in front of you. I kind of spoke at the budget meeting, my comments around concerns around the budget. That was kind of where I was only going. So I will throw it back to you.
And if you could do your gowns for Jostens this week, that would be great. I sent you the link.
Okay, gowns for Justin. Okay. So, any schedule, no public? Okay, all right, off we go. So consent agenda, the consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be ordered on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? See any, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded, okay. Roll call vote, I'm a yes.
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 Yeah.
Okay, that motion passes. So first action item is the school resource officer contract.
I presented on this last time and basically, and in your packet, we updated the contract. There's really only one place where a date is mentioned. So it's just right at the beginning where we did a 1-year contract. So we could run through the process, keep the data, and then come back and present that to you. We weren't able to do that this year because they did not assign the officer. So what we're asking for is just, we're moving this forward 1 year. It'll start July 1. We've run through a process. We have the new officer, Bonnie E. We're ready to go, but that contract ran out. So we just are asking you to approve it for 1 year. We'll bring back the data and then we'll have a discussion.
So I'll move that we approve the contract as written.
I'll second.
Okay.
I have a couple.
Okay,
So will the SRO work a 5-day week?
Yes.
And so he will be there at all times. He's not
Well-
gonna be pulled off.
That does happen at times. The SRO is actually a detective. And so anything that comes through the police department that's related to kids gets assigned off to him. So that could be an investigation that's happening at an elementary school, an abuse. So that does happen. Part of what we will be doing is tracking, because part of the data is the attendance. Because there were times in the past where they were pulled off for even not really school business.
Right.
Well, so we want to be able, we will track that and then we'll report that back to you.
When there was the committee to look at the SRO, one of the things that came up, and it wasn't answered at the last meeting, was that teachers and students and parents had a misunderstanding of the role of the SRO. So how is that going to be communicated?
We'll actually work with the high school and middle school first to educate staff on what the role is, and then actually to work to educate students. So that'll be part of the process that we start this out with.
I think it'd be also helpful to have something in a, superintendent's note,
Yeah.
what they do or don't do, because the big assumption was that, the SRO is in all the buildings and, you know, predominantly the high school and that was one of them. And, you know, what they can and cannot do and, how do we know how effective the SRO is? Will you do a survey with teachers, parents, students at the end of the year?
Yeah, that's built into that contract.
It is.
Yeah, both the data that we'll keep and then also reach back out to folks.
I thought for some reason we were gonna be checking in or having data like quarterly or
Yes.
biannually or something.
Yeah.
And more than one a year, but like quarterly, we're gonna do a check-in.
Right.
See what kind of incidents they've had, what the officer's been doing.
That's what's built into this contract. I think there's also some learning for us as we get into this to find out what's useful. And like how much data are we gonna have in October, November, but that's what we're scheduled to do. Pat has already been working to kind of figure out how we're gonna track it and how we're gonna report it. So that's part of what Pat has to do kind of as we're getting going here.
Will Pat stay on?
Oh, yeah,
So Pat is an employee of our district,
yes, absolutely.
full time.
Not full, he's a retired guy. I would find a full time for him, but he doesn't want to work that.
Okay.
We are looking at next year to 0.6 to increase his hours because there's just a lot of work right now to get us kind of squared away. So,
Any other questions? Okay, all right.
Did we remake the motion? Or do we need to remake it or?
I don't think so. So we'll do a vote, on this action item. I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
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 That motion passes. And Brad, you probably need to step away. Okay, all right. Okay. Let's see, we go back to, let's go to number one here, Teacher Appreciation Week proclamation. So I will read the proclamation here. And then at the end of it, if we can have a motion on that, then we can move forward. So Teacher Appreciation Week 2023, whereas today's teachers mold our future citizens through their guidance and education, and whereas today's teachers encounters students of widely differing backgrounds and abilities, and whereas our society expects public education to provide quality education services to all children, no matter what their background or abilities, and whereas our country's future depends in large measure upon the education of our youth receives today, and whereas teachers spend countless hours outside their classrooms preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, and performing community service. And whereas our community recognizes that its teachers are providing quality education services to our children. Now therefore be proclaimed that the Forestville School District Board of Directors designates the week of May 8th to the 12th, 2023 as Teacher Appreciation Week in this community, and be it further proclaimed that the Forestville School District Board of Directors calls on the community to join in the first one, expressing appreciation for teachers for the job well done. Dated the 24th day of April 2023.
I move that we approve the Teacher Appreciation Week proclamation as presented.
I second.
And then seconded, I'm a yes,
I'm a yes.
Yes.
and that motion passes. Thank you. We're going to action item number 2, Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching Grant Resolution. Eileen.
Thank you. Tonight we have the awesome grant resolution. This is a requirement of ODE for us to execute the grant agreement. It's a almost $6.7 million matching grant for the bond that was passed this fall. So at this point, we are asking the board to approve the resolution for us to execute the contract.
So I will move to recommend that we approve the resolution 22-23R03 to execute the
OSDIM grant as presented.
Second,
Moved and seconded, so roll call vote, yes,
yes. Yes.
thank you. Next one is surplus equipment.
Tonight we have for you the 1997 F-350 crew cab. It's the Viking or the ag pickup at the high school. And they're seeking to trade that in on a new pickup or van. At this time, we are asking the board, since it's over an estimated value of $1,000, to declare it surplus for us to go ahead and trade it in.
So the current Bloom trade-in is 47 to 86.
Not that we will get that.
I know, but that's just incredibly high for 1997.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Especially if you've seen it. Oh.
Can't see better days.
It's the one that rolled in.
Oh, well.
So it's a big deal, okay. All right, I'll move that we approve approve the surplus of the 1997 F-350 ag pickup for trade-in on the newer ag pickup.
Second,
All right, yes, for me,
yes. Yes.
thank you. Next one is the EIM contract is broken.
Okay, so this is the request for board approval of SEMA contract, MOU for translation and interpretation services for next year. We're requesting 130,000. We don't really know where we're at, transparently. We have spring parent conferences left to be billed for, and it's $70,000, 715 we've already spent. We have the rest of this year to go. So there's parent conferences, individual parent meetings, et cetera, that need to be translated. So we're asking for $130,000. Also, they didn't go up the last few years because we were in pandemic and they wanted to be very supportive. This represents an increase for interpretation from $70, $75 to $85 and no other increases whatsoever. So rather reasonable. So the district administration requests board approval for SEMA services memorandum of understanding for $130,000 for the 23-24 school.
Okay, I move that the board approve the services with the memorandum of understanding for $130,000 for the 23-24 school year. All seconds.
Roll call vote, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. On to Renaissance contract.
Renaissance contract. Renaissance has been used for a number of years in our district at multiple grade levels. As we transition to our new district-wide reading assessment, M-Class and M-Class Lectura, we still need STAR reading assessments for 7 through 12. And we also need to move grade 6 for Spanish. But right now, bless you. Attached for your review is a 1-year quote for Renaissance, which is an expense of $15,603. And we ask you to give approval for this for the next 3 years.
I have a question. How many students are utilizing?
Basically all 7th and 8th graders. It's our fall, winter, and spring benchmark assessment.
Oh, okay.
And then also as needed, Kate.
Okay. And is Cal using this too?
Yes.
Okay.
It should be, yeah.
We're done 15 for 3, we're approving it. 3 years.
Yeah, we're approving this as our vendor. Because we have to go out for 3 quotes. This is the assessment that our whole system's aware of, our kids are aware of it. So this year's cost is $15,603.
Okay.
But we're asking for 3 years, so we're gonna have to keep bringing it back. Kate, did you want to say something? Oh,
The price can vary for the
the
next.
price can vary. Yeah, it's down actually
Okay,
from
okay.
47,000 this year,
Okay,
but that's gonna help pay for the M class, like Torah and M class. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because we're substituting.
okay. And okay, I mean, if for some reason price skyrockets, we
Then I'll
can
bring it
get
back.
out, okay, all right. I'm just approving it.
Our Torah will bring it back.
Okay, all right,
And-
go bring it back. I mean,
It's less than 50 grand, but the reason it's coming to you is there's a single vendor.
yeah,
And so we don't have 3 different quotes.
Right.
So that's why.
right, okay, all right. All right, I'll move that we approve the purchase of the Renaissance Star Reading System for the next 3 years.
Second,
A roll call vote, yes?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that motion passes. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
And now the Avid contract.
Yes, sir. So the district administration is asking for board approval for the next 3 years to continue our partnership with Avid. Attached is the contract for the 23-24 school year for your review, same as with Star, single vendor. We have multiple staff members that have been trained. In fact, over 300 Avid professional learning events have been utilized by our staff. So this Avid is throughout 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 12.
So I read through this and, so can you give me an example of how Avid increases the rigor for all our students?
Yes, that's a great question. It promotes Wicker strategies. That's writing, reading. Come on, Dave, help me out here.
So there's a couple different things. There's a base Avid class that we basically students who could achieve higher, but currently don't have the support. So they go through and they fill these Avid elective with those students. They encourage those kids to take AP, to take harder classes. They're given tutorial and support. So that's one way that this happens. The other way is through Avid, through the whole school, which is by training our teachers in different Avid strategies, one of which is a writing strategy, a note-taking strategy. They encourage kind of the skills of the student across the whole school. So there's kind of multiple ways that Avid tries to get at increasing rigor.
Thank you.
How do we measure the effectiveness of Avid?
So there's multiple ways. One is this primarily represents underrepresented students, populations, as well as economically disadvantaged. And they're students that basically have like a C average, and we're trying to promote college and career awareness. So we have multiple events throughout the year. Nyla, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as like a student, I have a lot of friends in Avid and they absolutely love it. And like, they are opened up to so many more colleges from it, like taking notes. They know how to take good notes through it. Like, Avid's highly promoted in our school and I'd like to keep it like that because so many kids get this new opportunity and help from all these teachers that now they have. So, yeah.
And then one more, what is Avid Ignite?
Okay, that's an online, that's new. And that's a new expense. We have a site facilitator at each of the schools can attend online professional development to the new resources to help coordinate the staff professional development in the building. So I know Brian Burke recently did one of these this year, but that would be one at Tom McCall, one at Neil Armstrong, and one at the high school. This is in addition to the Summer Institute. They don't necessarily have to go to Summer Institute because several of our administrators, the vast majority, have been multiple years with teams. So that's the coordinator type role.
Oh, so it's for our staff, not for
Yes,
students. Okay.
yes, that's the staff support.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks.
And then we also have a $6,000 additional fee for Arturo to attend. He attended years ago. He's very familiar, supportive of Avid. But Avid said, no, you need to come this new year, which is good because Dave went and his first year as superintendent, he came with our team I forget, out of state, and it was a great opportunity for him to share his vision and to support the learning of our teachers and staff members. So Arturo will be attending that. District director's mandatory training as well.
Thank you.
Well,
I have a couple questions. What's the percentage of Avid students that go on to further their education after high school?
Well, that's what I was gonna say is I believe they actually keep that data. I can go back and talk with Heather over at the high school, but they actually kind of track which kids are getting into school. So I think we can actually bring back that number.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I'm curious about that. And is Avid open to everyone?
the strategies are impacted by everyone. The Avid elective in the course itself, I believe students have to apply for it, and it's pretty,
But anybody could apply. There's no prerequisites or.
no prerequisites.
Isn't it your freshman when you have to, like, once you get further in high school, you're supposed to take it?
I'm not sure.
Because I feel like it's only freshman.
I think it's freshman, and then they stay in it all
Yeah.
4 years with their advisor.
Yeah.
So basically, it's college support class, not only study skills, but how to use your notes to study for an exam. Also they go on college visits, and they are very intentional of signing the students up on like career day and college day for those site visits. Who are you attending? Who are you going for? What are your interests? It's very powerful.
But they also kind of identify. So there's a bunch of work going on in the background, with counselors and staff around students. So yes, they're applying, but it's not just, I mean, they're actually going after kids and kind of helping them.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, like if there's, I don't know, just a way to make it more accessible to everyone. Or the kids that you see potential in or that might need a little bit more help to really, let them know about this opportunity and.
Yeah, I would say they're also open to the student who just wants to apply, but there is some purposeful activity going on in the background around identifying students who kind of fit into this band of like they could take off, they just haven't had the kind of support to be able to do the advanced course.
Or first generation. Yeah.
Counselors for Avid students,
Mhm.
okay, are they reaching out to like other kids that aren't in Avid?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that.
So when you talk about going to these conferences or trainings, how big is our group that goes and how often do they go?
It varies year to year, but I know the last numbers I had was like 17 in high school this year. Middle school, I think is smaller, a lot smaller. And then like Tom McCall, I believe last count was 5 that are attending, and most of them went last year. And it's basically a 2-year strand. So if I'm a math teacher, I go for the first year, how do I support the Wicker strategies in my classroom? And then the second year, it adds another layer of equity work as well as, next steps. You have that firm foundation. But what's also very powerful, like I mentioned, Dave was there and I was there with a team, and we had much larger teams because we were, now it's just that new staff, keeping up to date, but there's team time built in, very intentional, with Avid mentors that are usually principals and counselors from other schools that are hired by Avid to help each district team to work, and each school team to put together a site plan for the coming year. Now, what we always had was we brought the NAMS High School and Tom McCall site team with us from the prior year and said, okay, where are we at and how can we go to the next steps? And how many staff have we lost, in terms of, attrition.
But if you went for the 2 years, you wouldn't be sending the same staff back for 2 more years after that? And do we keep sending the same people over and paying all that
We
money?
hopefully don't, the principals, Karen and I attended a few years in a row, and we're like, okay, we're done, we're done. But it is important for those initial years to really connect and assign roles and responsibilities. What are our goals for them? And how are we going to transition from ninth grade and 10th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade? Does that make sense? And expand. So Karen hasn't gone for a number of years. I haven't gone for a number of years. We do have new staff like Julio Kelly and Summer Johnson, who attended last year 1, for them, and they're going back year 2 this year.
The structure in the school is a little different too, because you have the elective teachers, and what they're doing inside of the elective is, there's a lot more to it. So getting those folks back and continuing to push their learning. And then you have the other staff who are just doing the school-wide, which is making sure that the note-taking and the rigor strategies, there's a whole series of things. So there's kind of different, the level of training depends on what part of Avid you're supporting.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm curious about. You know, I just see all these dollar signs to send a group of 20 or more teachers for airfare, lodging, and per diem. And if they're going over the same things, it seems like the key people go. And then on a staff development day, they come and, you know, teach or deliver to this class added people, the note taking that you're talking about.
So that is kind of the plan, which is, again, there is a structure to Avid and what they're teaching and whether you're part of the school wide or whether you're part of the elected. And it is, I mean, it's the one thing about Avid, it's like, we would love a training in Portland. Currently, they're still doing it in San Antonio, they're doing it in San Diego, Seattle. But that's the challenge that we have. It's still a great program. We like it, so we're still supporting it. But we have to spend money to do that PD. And it's a challenge. I do like that there's an online training.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them utilize some more of that.
So Nike really believed in this extensively, and they gave us tens of thousands of dollars to help support our school and the vast majority of high schools throughout our county and state. That's kind of trickled off, but they saw the value in terms of these are workplace readiness skills that will only enhance our future employees. But great questions.
I was thinking, so the community school, you know, they go through 8th grade. Do we offer that opportunity for them? Or how do they communicate it to their 8th graders going to the high school? And
I'm sure they can participate. I will need to get back to you on, I'm not sure exactly how that communication happens. So I'll ask.
And the other, I don't know, what am I thinking of town? The Chicas program, you know, I mean, they're supporting our kids at high school level and, you know, the numbers are good, you know, are they participating or can they participate and how do they communicate it?
And they're benefiting from it school-wide because some of their students are definitely in Avid.
Yeah.
But also the school-wide expectation is everybody has a 3-ring notebook. And here's how you organize that 3-ring notebook. And that's part of, like, a math teacher goes to the math section. Hey, how do I make sure I'm taking Cornell formatted notes that they're going to see in science and English? So it becomes that routine. And the whole idea is when they do go off to community college or university or to the workplace, they can employ those skills in their ongoing professional development. So they're college and career ready by the time they graduate.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a great program, it should just be a requirement, like them as a freshman.
Yeah, and the challenge is the funding for the Avid elective class, but that's the whole point, that throughout, you know, this ongoing training, that it's district-wide expectation. So in CNI, we buy like the 3 notebooks for common call, all the way through. We usually buy the planners. And so the students know how to record an assignment when they walk into the classroom.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean. It's not, doesn't have to be required elective, it just has to be.
Implemented.
Yeah, this is what we do.
Absolutely.
That we take our notes, so we're gonna use these strategies, but.
So the challenge there is that there's 77 teachers at the high school. And so, again, it's $100,000 to do, the 20, 30 teachers or whatever. And so that's been the challenge of over time, how do we get to school-wide?
Take those 20 or 30 teachers that have been on for the last 20 years and have them teach the other.
And
And that
that's,
happens.
and that's exactly right. They do that in the sit times, very intentional. And in the departmental PLCs, whether that's the math or, how does that work? And that's been particularly necessary with the vast turnover we've had within the last 5 years. Almost 50% of our staff are classified and licensed, are new to our district. We've never seen it. In the 21 years I've been here, I've been in the community a lot longer.
So I'm just gonna put a plug, I've said this before, but I think when you talk about this avid and having students be able to challenge themselves academically, I'd like to see that at the middle school. And I'm an advocate for adding honors classes in the middle school. And it seems like this is in line with that. And we do it at the high school. You can take from an AP course to just an honors course or just a higher level math course. And I really, really would like to see us offer honors classes at the middle school. So that's my plug for this. So, but any other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move that the board approves for the next 3 years to continue our partnership with Avid, attached to the contract. Second.
Okay, roll call vote, yes for me.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, 6th grade Spanish, amplified science and literacy curriculum.
Yes, so we are asking for approval of 6th grade amplified science and literacy curriculum for years 2023, actually that's the typo, 2023 to 2028 school years. This is a 5-year adoption, capped at 50,000. You recall last year we did our pilot for the K-5 English and Spanish literacy adoption, and then 6th grade English, but Amplify does not provide a 6th grade Spanish component. So this has been what our pilot team did this year, and we have evaluated, and our committee has recommended that we move for a formal adoption.
How much do you think it's gonna cost? I guess it's not to exceed.
Yeah, that's the quote. That's the quote for the 5-year adoption. There's going to be a little bit of time and effort that we're going to have to put on the backside to make sure that some of the language arts standards are embedded and integrated for the fiction, for about like grammar and some fiction stuff that's not in the science curriculum because it's not a fiction curriculum. So, but I anticipate that it won't go over that as far as the actual adoption for the curriculum itself and materials.
Question. Okay. I move to approve the 6th grade Spanish amplified science instructional materials not to exceed $50,000, which will support a 5-year adoption cycle.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good, thanks. And language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, letters, professional.
We are asking for approval of letters professional development course for the 23-24 and 24-25 school years. Letters is a professional education series course. It teaches, provides education knowledge to teachers around scientific based reading and writing instruction. We are looking to fund two different cohorts. One is a cohort that started this year. Those are instructional coaches and myself that have now completed year one. And we're looking to now complete year two, the 2-year cycle. And then we are also asking for funding for cohort B, which would be up to capped at 15 teachers starting next fall, and that would be a 2-year cycle. The reason why I'm asking not only for cohort B, but cohort A, this total package price is because we are looking to build capacity over time within the district. And part of that is we need our coaches to become facilitators so that we don't have to purchase the training through letters anymore. And so in order to do that, we not only have to have our coaches fulfill the 2 years, but then we have to have them attend and train the trainer. And then we have to have at least one cohort of teachers attend through letters themselves. So this is a way of building, not only starting to build capacity now with our teachers, kind of a small chunk, but then also get towards that sustainability where we can provide the PD in-house for long term.
Is this for K through 12 or just elementary?
K5.
Okay. So have the administrators gone through this program?
The administrators aren't going through letters per se, but we have our literacy team. We have started a professional development series with them on the science of reading.
I would think that the administrators should do this. Because I always think that if you're going to ask someone to evaluate a teacher, you need to understand what you're asking them to do. If you don't understand the science of reading, and most of the administrators, in fact, mostly, I mean, I think the only school that's doing this is Eastern University over in LaGrange that is offering it. That I would think that the administrators should have this knowledge. And that's the problem I have, is that you ask administrators to supervise and evaluate the teachers, and they don't have this understanding. And it's pretty comprehensive, and it's really, really important. So, and I'm comfortable about this.
Well, we're hoping that through not only the PD series that we do with the administrators, but there is a professional development series through letters is tailored more towards administrators. So we're looking also into that, but I really don't want to, until I see more firsthand what's within the admin training, I don't want to be repetitious. And we are doing a pretty intensive science of reading PD series with our administrators. The other part of it is they wouldn't be able to do this type of structure, because this is really for teachers, because you have to go back to your classroom and apply the practices and do hands-on with your actual students, collect data, you look at the data, how is it informing your instruction? So there definitely needs to be something a little bit different for administrators.
Isn't there like 20 hours on the line for administrators? For letters?
I don't know what the exact factor is. Yeah.
I thought I said, okay.
But I think I would just echo that we see that need too. Now, what's the right training? Because that's what Elaine is trying to identify right now, is there is knowledge that our administration, our leaders need to gain so that we can manage this.
Yeah, because if you're going to really be successful at increasing the reading level, and you have a billing principal and he doesn't understand, letters is really an intense program. And it's really important. And if you teach, all the sounds to the kids and you have a team, you need that administrator. So when the teacher says, I need this, and he doesn't understand, or she, or they, or whatever, that, so that's the piece for me, is that everybody needs to be a team and they need to have the same understanding so that they can help each other.
So I would just jump in here and say that I understand what you're saying, but there's so many things that come along that programs that are in schools, to have an administrator have a very detailed knowledge of all of them is really difficult to do. It could be science, it's reading now, it could be science, it could be math, it could be social studies.
I get that, but the science of letters is really helping people understand, all the pieces that go into the sounds and that. And, you know, if you talk to, Mrs. Thompson at the high school, yeah. She said that we should be teaching reading K through 12. I mean, we really do. And at the high school, teachers are not teaching.
Well,
And we have a number of kids that are dyslexic.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing that they should have some understanding of how to supervise and evaluate that. Having to go through the training isn't what I'm saying, that I'm not sure they need to do that, but having some training about how to evaluate that, whether it's reading, whether it's science, whether it's math, whether it's social studies, whatever it is, they have to have some knowledge about being able to supervise and evaluate.
Some level of knowledge, right, that makes sense about supervision.
Right.
And direction.
Right.
Yeah, I understand. And I guess that's what I'm hearing from Dave.
Right, and I was
He
gonna say,
values that.
we were all correct, which is a deep understanding of phonics and explicit phonics is necessary. Also, we need to find the right level of instruction for our administrators to be able to do that. And I think there's kind of a mix, and I don't want to take credit because Elena and her crew, they've already been thinking about this and they're already lining that up.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're finding ways of getting it to them and doing it in a way where, you know, gives them some time to process, take it back to their staff, have discussions. I don't want to just do like and this course is truly an educational course. It's not a training, it's not a curriculum. It truly is education. 2 years of education, extensive education about how to teach reading. So it's not something that, like if an administrator was to do this, that they would be able to go out tomorrow and do like this is a complex process. So we're starting, going to have different levels, like differentiated instruction, if you will, for each level.
Well, I'm really appreciative that you got this program going and people have signed up because it's excellent. It's just really well
That yes, and hopefully they will be.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
I move that the board approves the letters professional development course and instructional materials not to exceed 36,000 for 2 cohorts of teachers and district staff for the 2023, 2024, and 2024 and 2025 school years.
I will second.
okay, yes,
Yes.
Yes, yes.
okay, thank you. Okay, this is a future action.
So just really excited to bring these list courses to you. The high school faculty administration are submitting these new course for your boost, 23-24 school. Additional costs, I know that's always a question, will be funded by site funding in Measure 98. Please, if you have any questions about that, reach out to Karen or Brian or myself, and we can get you answers.
So when you say maybe, you know, the additional funding is Measure 98 and the site funding, are we hiring more teachers to cover these?
No, you're not. These are courses that we can expand with our current faculty. I don't believe any, like the math courses are differentiating to a different level to meet the new tech standards that Allison Samuels talked about earlier. You know, walking for PE.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. So are we getting rid of some general PE classes to put in the walking for fitness or tennis? Because if less people are taking a generic PE class, because more people are wanting to take this walking for fitness, are we changing out the PE classes? Are we getting rid of some PE classes to bring these additional ones on?
So in a high school, traditionally, we throw up the classes on a course catalog, and student selection dictates what courses we offer and which ones we don't. And if we do have enough students that need a PE credit that choose walking for PE or walking for fitness.
It's pretty much walking for PE. The worst two.
Anyway, bottom line is that's how many sections we offer.
Okay.
And Miley, you're absolutely right.
And then.
There's a
for-
couple courses on here
Yeah.
that
You already have.
they did
Okay.
not go through the process.
Okay, so there already is a
Last
walking
year.
class.
Yes, and it's going well.
It actually has a lot of kids in that class.
It does.
Yeah. And
I
then
should-
for acting 1 and 2, do you know who's gonna be teaching that class?
What?
Acting 1 and 2.
No,
Okay.
So my question is kind of along the lines of what Val had mentioned. I mean, this is a lot of courses. So you have the courses you have in the high school now, and then you're adding these courses. And I was kind of thinking, I know that you have them on the books, so to speak, and you see what the enrollment is, but so there must be, what's the impetus for having these new courses? Is it because teacher driven, student driven?
Yes.
Both?
Both.
Okay.
Teacher mainly and student. Teachers obviously always want to enhance their programming and to also be responsive to student needs as well as student wants. And I know, like for the PE, lifelong fitness, you know, take a walking class, get everyone do a routine, it's not just going out and walking. So.
Well, I mean, at first it's better than seeing them sit against the side of the wall
Absolutely.
in soccer and not want to do anything, right? At least they're walking.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's better.
So I'll follow up with the FTE question as well, just to double check.
Yeah, because that's what I'm just kind of curious, like, this is a lot of classes and where are they gonna fit in? Like, we already have such a full selection of classes. Another quick question about that.
Sure.
So we added personal finance the second semester to the high school. Is that gonna be we did it already.
Yeah.
But is that gonna be a required class or is that still an elective?
That, I believe, is an elective course, but we're also watching ODE because they have discussions right now in the legislature to make it a mandatory class. And I'm not sure where it's at.
Okay,
in
I was
terms-
just curious.
Yeah,
We have a civics class.
we have the government class.
Oh, that's where it's on.
Yeah.
Okay, future action, so next meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
And let's see, I think. Yeah, that's. I have something to read here, so. Are there any items board members would like to add to the current list? Are there any committees or other activities that members have attended that they would like to report? There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 7:35 p.m. Thank you.